We had Jim Paulson talking to us on CNBC in the US there last night. He, of course, is the Chief Investment Strategist for Wells Capital, and he says we are. There is probably going to be a correction yet. He says that some of these declines, like the declines we saw overnight, this is just the start. We're going to see a lot more of them. And you know, part of this is, I guess, a continual failure of stocks to actually keep going up, because they go up a little bit, they pull back a bit, they go up, they pull back. Do you believe that a correction is on the cards and is coming? I mean, we do talk about this, and we have talked about this for the last few months, but what do you think now?
You know, Chantico Global's general view has been that this is going to be a sideways choppy market. That doesn't necessarily have to include a correction. Now it can, but it's not part of our central thesis. What we have been seeing is continued slowing in the advancement of this rally, and that matches with our expectation. And the reason for that, in our opinion, and I think you know, Jim Paulson made kind of a similar comment, as did Mohamed Al-Arian overnight, which is that much of what's been feeding earnings up until now have largely been policy moves that have either made it very cheap to finance, or made it very easy to do stock buybacks. There have been reasons that have propped up earnings that really have had nothing to do with sales. Now we're starting to run out of these extra things that can boost earnings, and now we're getting down to sales as the final and only a booster of earnings, and I'm not entirely certain that that's going to deliver. Sales growth has been very tepid over the last 5-6 years since the crisis, and hasn't really resumed dramatically. And in fact, we see, you know, continued disappointments in terms of spending, consumer spending in the U.S., despite having very cheap gas prices and everything that should have actually been very supportive for consumer spending. And in fact, we see savings rates continuing to be slightly higher. So that tells me that the consumer isn't quite there yet, and earnings may disappoint. So yes, you could see a correction.
Could see a correction. Okay, here's the thing, you know, back to Jim Paulson. I mean, his sort of central thesis is that the Fed is leaving it too late to hit the liftoff button here. And because of that, you know, either way, if the recovery continues on or if the recovery sort of sputters, the market's going to have a tough time. If it recovers, continues the way it's going, you've got, you know, full employment and all the inflationary pressures associated with that. If the recovery sputters, well, then you've got pressure on margins as well. So in either case, for the market, for U.S. corporates, they're going to have a tough time. Is that a fair statement?
I do think it's a fair statement. I'm not entirely certain that we're that late. I mean, late would suggest that we have really, really big inflation pressures that are bubbling up. And although we are seeing better labor numbers, the whole story doesn't support that. I mean, we still have an average duration of unemployment right now at a little over 30 weeks. People are out of work on average over 30 weeks between jobs. The pre-crisis average before the crisis hit was 13 weeks. We are more than double that. So to tell me that we're at full employment, someone is drinking something.